If you like the Young Turks podcast, I think you'll love a lot of the podcasts on the TYT network. Old School, it's one of my favorites, one of the favorites for a lot of the listeners. Please check that out, subscribe, share it. That makes a big difference, and give it a 5-star rating. Thank you.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Young Turks. I'm Kasparian, and Cenk is out again, but he'll be back tomorrow. We have Francesca Fiorentini and Jayar Jackson for hour 1 today. What's up, guys?
Hey.
I've been just trying to say quid pro quo as fast. See, I can't even do it. Quid pro quo.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't think I've ever said this on the show. Every time I hear quid pro quo, I think of The Hangover, where I forget the name of the character, but he says quid pro quo, mother effer, and so that always plays in my head.
Ooh, we need that.
Yeah,
I'm sure that's a gift.
It's really good.
Not only is it hard to say quickly, try typing it really fast.
Quid pro quo, quid pro quo.
If you type it, you're gonna
I'm
mess
just
up.
saying crow.
Yeah.
Anywho, I'm good.
We have a lot of great news to cover today. Some good news in regard to the elections that took place yesterday. So I don't want to waste any time. Why don't we get right to it? Democratic candidates in major local elections won yesterday, and this is a really big deal because it does make a statement when it comes to Donald Trump, his popularity, and how much sway he has on these local elections. So let's start off with the great state of Virginia, where Democrats were able to flip the state to their advantage. In Virginia, Democrats reclaimed control of the state's General Assembly for the first time in 2 decades, building on big gains the party made just a year after Trump took office. When Trump took office, Democrats held just 33 of 100 seats in the state's House of Delegates. Come January, they will hold as many as 55. In the state Senate, Democrats won at least 21 out of 40 seats, meaning that the state legislature consists of majority Democrats.
Incredible.
Yeah, it is incredible. Very, very good news. And then there was also great news out of Kentucky. Now, Republicans in Kentucky were really hoping that they could sway the gubernatorial race in their direction by nationalizing that race. So you had Governor Matt Bevin, who is the Republican incumbent, running against Beshear, the Democrat in the state. And it's incredible because Matt Bevin was not popular by any means. He was not polling well. And part of the reason why was because he was constantly going after the powerless in his state, namely the teachers who had decided to strike because there was some talk about their pensions not being properly funded. So they strike, and then Matt Bevin thinks it's a great idea to come out and say things like this.
You know, here's what's crazy to me. You know how many hundreds of thousands of children today were left home alone? I guarantee you somewhere in Kentucky today, a child was sexually assaulted that was left at home because there was nobody there to watch them. I guarantee you somewhere today, a child was physically harmed or ingested poison because they were home alone, because a single parent didn't have any money to take care of them.
So he went out there and he demonized these teachers who were essentially gonna get screwed when it came to their own pensions. And remember, we're talking about teachers. We're talking about people who are severely underpaid as it is. And he goes out there and he blames them for being accessories to terrible things like sexual assault.
Yeah, can I just say that no one suggests that a child who is at home from school will be sexually assaulted or poisoned unless they're a pedophile. So I'm pretty sure Bevin has sexually, I don't know, maybe he's thought about it, but no one's like, oh yeah, home from school. I'd be like, you get to watch cartoons, you ride some bikes, and he's like, they're gonna be touched. And you're like, no.
It was weird that his mind went there. And I remember at the time when we covered that story, it was in 2018, I said that. I was like, I find it strange that his mind automatically goes there. That's not the way a normal person thinks.
Yeah, if you support him, you'd stop and go, man, I believe in Matt, what he's saying. But not that part. Where'd that come from? And also, since he's so concerned with kids being home alone with single parent households and whether or not they can get to school every day, is he worried about maybe funding for school lunches? They can eat enough because a single parent household maybe not make enough. Also, during the summertime, is he passing legislation to fund some kind of oversight for kids when they're on summer vacation, maybe spring break, winter break, things like that, when people have to work constantly and their kids are home alone? It's not just that day where kids are home alone, and parents are confronted with what to do with their children for daycare.
It was his way of, I don't know, attempting a guilt trip on these teachers who absolutely should have gone out there. They should have done the strike. I'm glad that they did it. But Matt Bevin loved to go after the powerless in Kentucky. For instance, he was very supportive of the law. He was proposing a law where you would have to work in order to receive Medicaid, right? And so that was wrapped up in the courts, but it's just another example of something that led to his level of or lack of popularity in the state. Now let's go to the election and what actually happened. In Kentucky, Attorney General Andy Beshear declared victory over Governor Matt Bevin by just over 4,600 votes out of more than 1.4 million cast, an apparent upset election in one of the more conservative states in the country. Now, just to give you an idea of how much of an upset this really is, 4 years ago, Bevin defeated his Democratic rival by about 85,000 votes. And in Jefferson County, the most populous in the state, Beshear beat Bevin by almost 100,000 votes, more than twice as large as the margin by which Bevin's 2015 opponent won it. Beshear almost doubled the 2015 Democratic nominee's performance in Fayette County, home of Lexington. So this is a big deal. And look, Bevin thought, well, here's the thing. Kentucky is an interesting state, right? Because Kentucky will elect Democratic local politicians, but on a federal level, they're not happy with Democrats. And so they have latched onto Trump partly because Trump has this populist economic message. Like, we all know he's lying, but positioning himself as like this populist has really resonated with the conservative voters in Kentucky. And so what did Bevin do? He asked Donald Trump to basically rally for him in Kentucky, and that's exactly what he did on Monday. We have a short clip of that. Let's take a look.
Tomorrow, Kentucky has a chance to send the radical Democrats a message. You will vote to reject the Democrats' extremism, socialism, and corruption, and you will vote to reelect Kentucky Governor Matt Bevin, who's done a great job. Now, he is difficult, I have to say, maybe it cost him the election, but it's okay. Here, look. He's such a pain. When he needs something for Kentucky, like money, like aid, like he wants me to call one of the many manufacturers now that are coming into Kentucky. Could you call the head of some company in Japan, please? I say, Matt, do I have to do it? Please, please. But isn't that really what you wanted, a governor? I mean, really. That's what you want. He's such a pain in the but that's what you want.
That is the president of the United States. But look, Bevin's attempt to nationalize that race didn't work. It wasn't good enough. So the economic populist message that came from Beshear out-trumped Donald Trump's rally and Bevin's attempts to nationalize that race.
Bevin was sitting on the sidelines. There was a camera shot that we didn't have there where he's sitting there and he was going, how could you do this to me?
I know.
No, the whole time he's sitting there going, yeah, man, such a pain. How does that work? Okay, so again, we just talked about last week how, or maybe earlier this week, when Trump was going after California over the wildfires and going after the governor here, Newsom. Oh my God, he wants all this money. I'm gonna pull that money because you guys don't listen to me. I thought you just said that's a pain for Matt Bevin to be bugging you all the time to beg for money and beg for this and beg for that. But somehow California, with a natural disaster that's happening, normal funding for things that help citizens of this country, that's not good enough. But this guy begging for money so he can make sure companies come in, he can give tax breaks to while he screws over the people of the state. That's an okay thing. Which one? It's because he supports you and this other one doesn't. It all comes down to that.
100%.
Yeah, and I think, first of all, that entire claim, like, don't you want someone who's a sycophantic loyalist? Hey, like, no, you don't want that.
So
like,
weird.
But this defeat of Bevin, I think, shows a number of things. And to your point about Bevin trying to nationalize Trump's victory, Trump's message, to sort of like, latch onto his coattails and say this still works in 2019, did absolutely fail. And it shows that the message around radical socialism, it's falling on deaf ears because people don't actually understand what is being said, like, all right, are there re-education camps yet? Like, when do I go? Do they got health care? Because I'm talking about health care. It turns out that's what Bashir is talking about.
Yes, exactly.
He is talking about health care. He is against, these Medicaid work requirements. He is for keeping Medicaid expansion. And then I think it's really important that it's not just Bevin's miscalculation in terms of whether he, brought Trump in at the wrong time, which is like such a gamble. Like, hey, let's bring senile old grandpa in here to sort things out. Like, whoa. But it shows that like organizing the teachers, organizing works. Kentucky Education Association. The Kentucky Education Association knocking on doors, that actually works. And I feel like a lot of the media, we're always like, okay, well, how does that have to do with DC or not? It's like, screw DC. This has to do with people on the ground, just like a victory like AOC's in Queens, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Or the Bronx. Why am I saying Queens?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That activism on a local level is incredibly effective. But also, I just want to know, and really hammer this point, because people keep arguing that Joe Biden should be the Democratic nominee for president because of his electability. But keep in mind that the one message, possibly the only message that resonates for voters across the ideological spectrum, is the economic populist message. It really is. Because whether you're a Democrat or Republican, if you're working class or middle class, you are feeling the injustice of this economic system. So what Bashir did was incredibly savvy, incredibly smart. He stayed on message. There were multiple attempts to try to get him to attack Trump. And while I believe it's obvious that he's not a fan of Trump, he avoided doing that because he understood making that race about whether or not you support Donald Trump is essentially handing a victory to Bevin.
Because we've seen the way sometimes Trump supporters work. They don't care that he has bad policies. But with maybe other Republicans, again, in this case, Bevin, his bad policies are on full display. And then, there was, I think, the 4 of the 5 seats still stuck with Republicans they're talking about. And we'll talk about how Fox News was bragging about that and Trump Jr. was as well. But that's the thing. When people are dug in their smaller elections, smaller campaigns, they're still stuck with I got to go with Republicans because Republicans are best for me. But on the full state scale, when Bevin's running, you have to deal with everyone. And everyone is going to have to deal with seeing what this guy's doing for the entire state. And there's enough people that look up and say, this isn't working out for me. But so to take the lead for what Bashir did, you have to continue to push the truth narrative of what's really happening with policies. Because the rest of these guys have just as bad a policy as Bevin did. It's just they weren't put at such a large scale of the entire state. He's being the head of the state, his is put on blast. So smaller campaigns running for these other seats, make sure you point out the opponents, the same type of agendas they have that are very similar to Bevin's.
And then one other thing I wanted to point out. So in Kentucky, the voters tend to vote for both Republican and Democrat candidates, right? But on a national level, they have a great deal of disdain for Democratic members of Congress. I mentioned that, and I mentioned the relevance of that because what that means is they feel, look, we already know the economic populist message resonates with them. They feel left behind by Democrats on a national level. So for the Democrats, the corporatists who are saying, oh, no, forget about the Warrens and the Bernies of the world. They're gonna cost us the election. We need a moderate, we need a centrist. Understand that the messaging coming from those types of candidates does not resonate with as many people. It just doesn't.
Absolutely, and I think you put the shoe on the other foot. Okay, running on pro-Trump, anti-impeachment doesn't work. So then the converse is true. Running only on the impeachment and only against Trump, Biden, doesn't work. It's not going to work to only make this a national thing. Go local, and I think we saw, some Democrats saying, oh, hey, look, healthcare wins, education wins. It's like, who are the candidates who are speaking about public education, expanding public education? Who are the candidates who are talking about expanding Medicaid and Medicare for all? Like these, it's not a philosophical conversation. It's not an ideological conversation. It is a stat-heavy, proven conversation that when you run on these bread and butter issues, you're gonna win.
Definitely. Now, let me go to a part of the story that could end up being disastrous if Democrats don't fight to maintain this clear win, okay? So in the state of Kentucky, you had Bashir, who was the attorney general in the state, beat the incumbent Republican gubernatorial candidate, Matt Bevin. Now, Bashir won by a slim margin, but he won. And now Bashir is, of course, saying he won, but then Bevin is saying, no, I'm not gonna concede, I'm not buying this at all. So as a result, you have some bad actors getting involved. Kentucky Senate President Robert Stivers threw another wrench into the state's razor-thin gubernatorial outcome late Tuesday night, saying that the legislature could decide the race. Stivers said based on his staff's research, the decision could come before the Republican-controlled state legislature. So they're gonna try to have Republicans in the state legislature decide who actually won, even though if you count the votes, the person who was the clear winner here was Bashir. Andy Bashir.
Where is the legality in that? Like, I'm not understanding what rock that law is hidden under. Isn't it? I thought it was supposed to be if you want to recount, you file a formal request to the judiciary, right, in the state.
We know that Republicans like to make up rules as they go along. Right. So let's actually hear from legal experts and what they have to say. So one legal expert from Brandeis School of Law says they can't just make them up. If the House and Senate were just to proceed on vague allegations without proof, that raises serious questions about disenfranchisement of voters who voted for Attorney General Bashir. It's an extraordinary proposition to suggest that the General Assembly would take vague allegations of unspecified irregularities and call into question a gubernatorial election.
Sounds similar to their president after he even won the election, still talking about the millions and millions of votes that were stolen by illegal immigrants. I'm not sure where he was pulling it all from, but every time you hear them accuse one group of doing what they're always trying to do, then you know to look at that source. Look at where that information is coming from. They'll probably have that down the pike to pull off anyway. So pulling out that one line, the disenfranchisement of the voters. When has the Republican Party cared about that?
Never.
From,
I mean,
from Voting Rights Act, from opposition to that, to literally tossing out votes from people or making sure the machines aren't counting votes the way that they should be. The irony's way too strong for them to continue to go out on this route, but they will anyway until someone actually calls them out and says, this is the Republican Party. There needs to be that level of strength in your statement.
Yeah. What's incredible about Republicans, both on a local and national level, is they know they can't win based on their messages, right? They know that they don't have any popular political positions to really run on and win on. And so they try to game the system to their advantage so they can literally cheat to win, right? They do it when it comes to changing voter ID laws. They do it when it comes to gerrymandering and drawing up districts in a way that puts them at an incredible advantage. Their ideas are unpopular. And what we need on the left is more of that firebrand, behavior, like the AOC-like behavior, where you call it what it is, you call it out. I just feel like Democrats overall haven't done a good job in calling it out, right? They always play defense, they never play offense. I think it's time to play offense.
Yeah, the playbook a lot of times Republicans is fear. We talked about Bevin and the school agenda he had when teachers were striking. You pump fear first because our voters are fearful and they're gonna be motivated by fear and anger. So that's why he went with the, hey, kid's gonna get raped today. Then go, oh my God, kids are getting raped. Just go with the most extreme because your base is gonna be riled up by that. Then you go with voter suppression, then after you've lost that off voter suppression and fear, then you just subvert the whole process at the end of it all.
Well, and I think one of the ways, and I'm not sure I've seen Democrats come up with a skillful way to tackle the extreme racism and xenophobia that comes out of the right. Like I'm surprised actually that they went in Kentucky with the socialism rather than immigrants are coming for your jobs, which seems sort of like, that's like hit number one and it always kind of works and everyone dances to it. It's a terrible song. But the point is I think Democrats need not just an economic populist message, but also one that is inclusive, one that is anti-racist, and one that says, listen, all of these economic reforms help all of us, and they also primarily benefit people of color, working class people of color, and immigrants aren't stealing your jobs. It's corporations who aren't actually giving a fair shake to their workers, who are taking away money from public education. It's governors who take millions of dollars out of the public education system that is a threat to your job and your stability.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, just to give you an example of what I would do if I were playing offense, and that's at this point in the game, I really think that's the most important thing to do, is every time I suspect that anti-immigrant message is gonna come up, I'm gonna bring up the fact that Donald Trump hired foreign workers as soon as he got elected. It was the first thing he did. He raised the cap on foreign workers, and then Trump Properties immediately applied for over 70 foreign workers for their company, okay?
Absolutely.
What happened to America First? They're all lies, right? I would hit them with that before they can hit me.
There's so much hypocrisy there.
Yeah.
It's rich. You can hit it all.
So I remember when I was debating Ann Coulter at Politicon, someone in the audience who I knew was unfortunately seated around a bunch of her fans. And I brought up that thing about the foreign workers. And apparently a few of them were like, wait, is that true? Is that real? They don't know. They don't know because it's not information that's ever given to them.
Of course not.
By the media that they watch, certainly. So. Anyway, we got to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to give you Donald Trump's reaction to what happened in Kentucky last night, and then some other great developments that might have fallen through the cracks. If you're not paying close attention, I want to give you the details on that and more when we return.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
I love when we play that music, that coming back from break music, because it reminds me of Anchorman every time.
That particular
Yeah,
tune?
65% of the time it works every time.
Oh, it seems somber and like bedtimey.
It sounds like a 70s era, like, you know what I mean? Elevator music type thing.
Yeah, someone definitely got groped to that music.
Oh my God.
Sorry.
All right, a few member comments and then a few announcements. Colorado Blue Blazer Regular writes in and says, Franny is in the house with 4 exclamation marks, I believe, yes. A great panel with Anna and Jayar, and now Franny too. What a Wednesday. Do you like being called Franny?
No, I'm just kidding. You can call me Fran, you just don't call me Fran. Just don't call me late.
I never remember which one it is. I always get confused because Anna was giving you trouble last time. Whether it's Franny or Fran, I was like, which one is the best?
You gotta earn a lot to call me
like
Fran.
without even asking for permission. Like no one gave me permission. I just started
That's
calling
okay.
her Fran. And she was like,
You're already gonna be the godmother of my children, right, Anna?
Sure.
We're best friends. All right, I'm done.
All right. Nipple Pierce Jank in skinny jeans writes in and says, I don't think people understand if Bevin is not governor, he will be left at home unprotected against abuse and poisoning. I hope you're all happy now.
Yeah, also Jank has a nipple ring, so your joke
No, he doesn't.
really work.
Actually, I don't know and I don't want to know.
He might.
Okay. Super inappropriate. All right, so let's move on to a few announcements. Cal Penn will be joining us on both the conversation and the Friday Power Panel. So make sure you check that out. So as you know, our Friday Power Panel will air as usual at our usual time. And then Cenk will have a conversation with him to follow. They're gonna talk about Sunnyside on Netflix. He also previously served in Barack Obama's White House as Assistant Director of Social Engagement and is known for his roles in Designated Survivor, House, and Harold and Kumar.
Yeah, I was gonna say, don't ask him about White Castle. I feel like it's one of those things. Just don't bring it up. It's too old. And he's done other
can't?
stuff. I just feel like I would avoid it.
Have you guys on
Stop
this coast?
censoring journalists.
Yeah, don't censor. But have you guys had White Castle?
Oh, I grew up on White Castle.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Anna,
I haven't actually, but I'm curious about it.
you haven't felt the slide?
No, I have not felt
It
the
just
slide.
slides down your throat.
Oops.
So it's like slimy?
No, it's like good.
No, it's just not beef.
One other real quick announcement. We are going to do another Super Chat postgame show. So we're hosting a special hour-long Ask TYT Anything Super Chat postgame on Monday, November 11th. So use YouTube Super Chat to ask either me or Cenk any questions that you'd like. Everyone can watch starting at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. So this will not be behind a paywall. Everyone will be able to watch this, but only the individuals participating on the YouTube Super Chat can ask us the questions. Go to youtube.com/TYT to do just that. All right, let's move on to the rest of the news. Last night, Kentucky gubernatorial incumbent Matt Bevin lost to the Democratic Attorney General in the state, Andy Beshear. And this was bad news for Donald Trump because Donald Trump had specifically campaigned on behalf of Matt Bevin. And Bevin still lost. Even though Bevin tried to nationalize this race and make it about Trump, the conservative voters in Kentucky were not buying it. Now, Trump has come out to try to find a way to spin this in his favor. Before we get to his statement though, I want to give you a little taste of his rally for Bevin just this past Monday.
You got to vote because if you lose, it sends a really bad message. It just sends a bad, and they will build it up. Here's the story. If you win, they're going to make it like ho-hum. And if you lose, they're going to say Trump suffered the greatest defeat in the history of the world. This was the greatest. You can't let that happen to me.
So it seems like he recognizes that Bevin losing signals something about Donald Trump's not only popularity, but influence. Influence is the right word, right? So now he's saying via Twitter, no, it has nothing to do with me, okay? All right, we won big in the state of Kentucky. This is what his tweet said. Won 5 out of 6 elections in Kentucky, including 5 great candidates that I spoke for and introduced last night. Interesting how he doesn't mention any names there. Matt Bevin picked up at least 15 points in the last days, but perhaps not enough. Fake news will blame Trump, right? Look, I don't think anyone's blaming Trump for Bevin losing, but the fact that Bevin's attempt to piggyback off of Trump and nationalize that race, and the fact that it failed says something about Trump's influence.
Oh yeah, I just love that rally just it's like his id, just like inside every day, especially that face, that perfectly square orange, like it's just like him like farting on the toilet, going, thinking about the impeachment, going like, you can't let that happen to me. Well, no, film me while I do this, please. Just you can't let that happen to me. That's Trump. That's all we're seeing.
It's all about me,
That was
me,
beautiful.
me, right?
Oh yeah, I will make anything about me. Oh, is your niece having a birthday party? It's about me. Because I'm also having a birthday party. Like
I throw the best birthday parties for nieces. Like he'll find a way.
Yeah.
Now he also tweeted, our big Kentucky rally on Monday night had a massive impact on all the races. The increase in governor's race was at least 15 points and maybe 20. Why doesn't he just like put out more numbers while he's at it? Maybe 50, maybe 50, why not?
Yeah, Bevin was polling at 0% before I came in there, and then he got all the way up to 48. Just make it up.
So let's go to Don Jr. attempting to distance his father from Matt Bevin.
Hey, Don, Bevin was the most unpopular governor in the country, was once down 20 points.
I like Matt Bevin. He's been a friend of mine. He's a good guy, but he's picked a lot of battles. He's, teed off on a lot of people in Kentucky. That's not always popular. We understand how that works. Like I said, I think he's done a good job, but Matt Bevin has picked some fights. So this has nothing to do with Trump. The two really, I don't think, have that much to do with each other.
This has nothing to do with Trump. I mean, Trump came in and attempted to save Bevin, but his influence wasn't significant enough to save him.
He only
That's
said
what
he
the
has some.
message is.
Now this is where the message should go again. So yeah, they won 5 out of those 6 other ones. Trump has nothing to do with Bevin. All of a sudden, even though we just heard him say Trump has everything to do with Bevin on that night, I guess. But any other time, no, not at all. He's been picking too many fights. He's totally unpopular. Again, why was Bevin unpopular? He signed laws to mandate ultrasounds and require health care providers to show patients pictures of fetuses before performing an abortion. Remember when Trump was running for president and he was asked at one of those town halls, what do you think about women that may get an abortion? I think they should be punished. He said, what about the men? Maybe not. Sounds like he matches up with your policies. He also, they passed conservative labor laws, a right to work policy that undercut unions, replaced their prevailing wage, guaranteed public work employees base salaries, cut all that down. Sounds a lot like the Republican Party agenda altogether. He also successfully pursued a waiver from the Trump administration to add work requirements, premiums, and co-payments to the Medicaid program. Sounds a lot like President Trump and his entire agenda. They're not separate. You can say, hey, he had those bad policies. Trump Jr. goes on TV and says he was unpopular. He was picking fights with teachers. He was stepping up against hard unions. That's what you guys do.
Right.
When was the last time the Trump administration came out and said, oh man, these teachers, they really need a pay raise. They haven't got one in 35 years. They don't do that. Bevin's policies are the Republican Party's and especially this president's policies. Don't let him separate the two. He follows the lead. What Republican doesn't follow the lead of Donald Trump?
Such a great point. It's such a great point, Jayar. And there's a disconnect because remember, voters in Kentucky might be in favor of voting Democratic candidates into office on a local level. But again, they have great disdain for Democrats on a national level. So there is a disconnect there because they tend to believe that Donald Trump is looking out for their economic interests, but in reality, he's not. So there needs to be a better strategy on the left to make it abundantly clear that Donald Trump is not looking out for you. He's not even looking out for his base. Donald Trump looks out for himself, for the wealthy, and the swamp that he has infested his administration with.
His entire administration and his candidacy has been a Trojan horse for a dying Republican Party that didn't know how to package their bogus policies anymore. And the last card that they had to play was the race card. It was the racist card, and they decided to play it with Trump. And it's actually not holding up for them as well as they thought it would because exactly, like mask off and guess what? They're against labor unions. Mask off and they're against a woman deciding what to do with her own body. They're against raising the minimum wage and all of the same things. And they're for tax breaks for the wealthy, et cetera. I just think, what happens to the Republican Party? And like, who is going to roll out the red carpet when they decide to try and resuscitate themselves? When the Romneys and the Flakes and whomever else, they come back into the fold. Like, will it be Democrats? And that's what I'm afraid of. And I don't mean that to say like let's further drive a rift in our country. I mean that to say is there needs to be some kind of, atonement is the most ridiculous word that could come out of my mouth right now, but there's gotta be a shift. There's gotta be an understanding that this party, and it's not just with the economic policies, with the impeachment, with the corruption. Who's come out against for the impeachment from the Republicans? Who said there was actually something wrong with offering or holding up aid to another country until they investigated your political rival? That is wrong. That is wrong. Right. That's a high crime and misdemeanor right there.
And I think the only person I can think of who still identifies as a Republican who came out and said that this is wrong is Romney. Right? Like, Justin Amash does not identify as a Republican anymore. They kicked him out, so he's an independent now.
This is the guy who read the full Mueller report?
He read the Mueller report. He was like, this is, you guys, this is really bad, right? We shouldn't be for this. And they're like, get out of here. We're done with you.
That's not a Republican thing to do.
So look, even though I disagree with Justin Amash on just about everything, he's as conservative can be. Conservatives can be. I give him credit for at least being principled and caring about the rule of law. You hear Republicans claim they care about the rule of law. Donald Trump said he was the law and order candidate when he was running. We all know that is the furthest thing from the truth.
And I guess what I mean is accountability. I'm sorry. And the last thing I'll say is it's not just the amount that the Republicans have hitched their horse to Trump goes far deeper than I think we even know at this point. But we have to remember these two Giuliani goons who were arrested, like Thumbface 1 and Thumbface 2, like they were arrested for funneling campaign money into Republican campaigns, into Republican PACs. Not just Donald Trump PACs, right? But other Republican PACs. And so it's like, everyone's touched the dirty money, like everyone's got it on them. So what? They have nowhere to go but down. There's no way they can get out of this other than doubling down on a corrupt president.
And you gotta keep their feet to the fire, as you were mentioning earlier. So also to be fair to Trump, by Law and Order president, he meant he's seen every episode.
Yeah. That was good. That was good. That was really good. All right, we got to move on to the next story, and this is a little bit of a roundup that I think is important to share with you all because it talks about all the little accomplishments that Democrats made last night that might not be getting as much attention. So, Trump's taking the main election day headlines, especially because Virginia has flipped the legislative control for Republicans to Democrats. And then when it comes to Kentucky, the governor's race went from Republican Matt Bevin to Democrat Andy Beshear, even though Bevin still refuses to concede that he lost. Now, there were a bunch of other things that happened during the election yesterday that I want to share with you. And this is really great news. Because of all the gains that were made for Democrats in both Virginia and Kentucky, Medicaid work requirements were defeated at the ballot box last night. That is a headline from the Washington Post, and it's absolutely true. So the Trump administration can only do so much in carrying out its vision for the Medicaid program, which includes requiring able-bodied enrollees to work or volunteer and generally trying to limit further dependence on public benefits by discouraging Medicaid expansion. To accomplish its goals for Medicaid, the Trump administration needs the help of state political leaders, and election results in Kentucky and Virginia yesterday made that less likely as Democrats widen their control in those states.
There's constant proof that it's all connected. Again, exactly what that was saying. You need these guys to head up these states, to control that agenda, to make sure you reject that for the people of each state. We talked about how these states reject what happened with when Obamacare was trying to actually do something, even though it didn't do enough. And they said, let's reject it and make sure that it's a failure, at least in our state, so the people here can be suffering, and then we say that's Obama's fault. When we just rejected what's gonna come in the state to help. Continue to link the two because people don't have the time to analyze it. It seems pretty simple. And let them know.
Yeah, and I think just going off of that, let's just clarify here, and it's something that I didn't really know, but that under Obamacare, Medicaid, which is healthcare for the poorest Americans, was expanded, right? And that means actually that the federal government will pay for 90% of Medicaid expansion costs. So it's not even going back to the state taxpayers anymore, right? And 14 states, Republican states, have not expanded Medicaid.
They rejected that money. It was federal money.
Yes.
So look, the Affordable Care Act did have wonderful components, and that was one of those wonderful components.
Right.
Obama essentially said, in the way that that law was written, hey, you know what? The federal government, with its resources, wants to help state and local governments expand Medicaid, and so we're gonna help fund that to the tune of 90%. And you have these Republican governors from red states, obviously, give the federal government the middle finger and say, no, we're gonna allow people in our state to go without health care.
Right.
Yep.
Right? People die under that type of thinking, and it's disgusting that they did that. So finally, there is some retaliation.
And there has been in 2018 also in the midterms, you saw in a couple of states, red states, there were ballot initiatives and ballot measures where they put it to the people, and the people were like, yes. Medicaid expansion.
Exactly.
He just got to complaining about Matt Bevin being a pain because he kept asking for money for things in the state. You didn't take that money that was coming to your state, though.
Things that are part of law already.
Democrats have taken control of Columbus, Indiana. That's actually his hometown. And so again, you're seeing these elections that are flipping from red to blue all over the place, including in areas where people like Mike Pence grew up. Also, two other great wins. I don't know if you guys remember this story, but there was a woman named Julie Briskman. She was a woman who flipped off Donald Trump's motorcade shortly after he was inaugurated. There's one of the headlines that CNN put out there. And so we're not gonna show you the photo, but she got fired from her government job as a result of that photo going viral. And she decided to run and for a local race, and she won. So she is now a district supervisor in Virginia, okay? So she says healthcare doesn't pass, but you try to dismantle it from the inside. 500 people get shot in Las Vegas. You're doing nothing about it. You know, white supremacists have this big march and hurt a bunch of people down in Charlottesville, and you call them good people. So she's noting all of the issues on the right. And these are the types of issues that encourage people to go to the polls and retaliate.
Honest politicians would pay attention to the fact that she ran on those types of things. But I haven't heard it yet because I haven't listened very closely. But what people's reactions are to her winning, but they'd say, this is the woman who flipped off the president. And that's why she won, because there's this much hate and division in the country. No, she had an agenda she's running on that actually paid attention to the American people. You can try and blow it off all you want because of that one instance. She was fired for that is actually the story behind that. Not that's what she was elected for. She was elected for other reasons outside of that.
And then I want to end on what happened in Lewiston, Maine. They actually hired a Somali immigrant, which is great news. And she had been targeted by online trolls. So her name is Safia Khalid. She's a Somali immigrant who ran for city council in Lewiston, Maine. And online trolls from as far away as Alabama and Mississippi, unsurprising, were hurling vile abuse at her, telling her that Muslims had no place in American government and she should go back to where she came from. Well, she wasn't buying it. She ran, she won. And this is really great news. I saw Representative Ilhan Omar tweet support toward her, which was wonderful to see as well. Look, this is really great to see because there's been so much fear mongering toward the powerless, the disenfranchised, people of color, and to see voters get energized to come out and defend these very groups of people is important. And it's also, let's keep it real, it's important to have representation in local government, in Congress. There's so many Muslims in the country, Muslim women in the country who haven't received much representation at all. So to see an increasing number of lawmakers get elected with that background is good to see.
Yeah, and at a time when it's easy to, I think a lot of immigrants around the country and a lot of religious minorities are feeling, like, well, maybe we should just. Maybe this country isn't for us. Maybe we should hide. Maybe we should make ourselves small. I think that elected representatives like this woman show that no, make yourselves big, make yourselves known, represent as broad and as narrow a swath of people as you want, and that actually just your policies are what matter.
Exactly, and don't let the trolls intimidate you. That's exactly what they want, and it just makes me really proud to see women fight back like this. All right, we're gonna take our break, but when we come back, we are gonna discuss how Lindsey Graham not only moved the goalposts when it comes to evidence for Donald Trump's impeachment, he has gotten rid of the goalposts altogether. He doesn't even want to see evidence pertaining to this investigation. We'll give you the details when we return.
At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your activity more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today. We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment.
Welcome back to TYT. Anna, Francesca, and Jayar with you. A few member comments before we move on. J-Bone writes in, this is again from our member comments. Hear me now, quote me later. The Kentucky General Assembly will vote to remove powers from the governor before Bashir is sworn in, just like they did in North Carolina. I'm really glad you mentioned that. I think, Jayar, you mentioned that as well during our production meeting, how they like to strip all the power from a Democratic governor, incoming governor.
Happened in North Carolina, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Marijuana's #3 fan Why is it Repubs always make beards look horrible? Trump Jr. looks horrible in a beard. Yeah, that is interesting.
That in comedy.
So, yes. But so that means Ted Cruz.
Oh, Ted Cruz's beard is, I feel assaulted by it every time I see it.
I mean, I just feel like anything that covers his face a little bit more.
But that's the thing.
You would think it'd be good to cover his face.
You would think it'd be good. Everyone's
Somehow
trying to get their
makes him look
Gorka on,
creepier.
but no one can do it.
You need the accent to go with it.
All right, in a few TYT lives, I bathe in Tomi Lahren's tears. That election was all about Trump. That's why Democrats actually won. I totally agree with you. Eclectic Miscellanea says, Francesca is right. Where are all the people of good conscience in the GOP fighting against Trump's racism and corruption? Either what's left of the Republican Party are cowards, racist, corrupt, or all three. Yeah, 100%. They care about their political careers way more than they care about anything else, including their so-called values and principles. Yeah. I mean, they're so afraid of Donald Trump coming after them on Twitter, and that means that their re-election is in jeopardy, right? Yep. That's all they care about. Look, the only reason why Romney is okay with timidly criticizing Donald Trump is because he doesn't have to worry about re-election for like 5-6 years.
Right.
He's like, maybe he's hoping he'll be gone by then. Can I mention one thing? Brenda, also, Heart of Life 77. She did mention the Paseo thing with MLK street name. Said the Paseo change was done just randomly by the city council, not by votes of the people. So if that's the case, I apologize to her. Implicating the people of Kansas. It was a Kansas City? Area?
Kansas City, Missouri, yeah.
Yeah, apparently it was the city council area. I mean, I'm going off of this tweet. We can maybe look into it more, but.
Okay, sorry about that. We'll look into it.
Racists.
All right. Either way, like the fact that that's
the fact that someone was doing it just wasn't the voters. It was the city council.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Racist. Well, let's move on to impeachment-related news. Senator Lindsey Graham, although very critical of Donald Trump during the election in 2015, has decided to be a Donald Trump sycophant. And nothing makes that clearer than his defense of Donald Trump in this impeachment investigation. Now, if you can recall earlier, Lindsey Graham made some declarations about how this impeachment investigation has no evidence, which is why he's supportive of Donald Trump. In fact, let's give you a little taste of what he had previously said.
If you're looking for a circumstance where the President of the United States was threatening the Ukraine with cutting off aid unless they investigated his political opponent, you would be very disappointed. That does not exist.
Well, it turns out that evidence does in fact exist. It exists in the form of actual testimony given by actual Trump administration officials. People like Bill Taylor, who was the US ambassador, people like Gordon Sondland, the EU ambassador, people like Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, who said that there absolutely was quid pro quo. I mean, the list goes on and on. You have more and more Trump administration officials, both current and former Trump administration officials, testifying before these House committees to say, this was wrong, yes, there was quid pro quo, right? Now, what does Lindsey Graham have to say about this overwhelming evidence? Well, Lindsey Graham, the Republican chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, doesn't plan on reading the transcripts of testimony from former special envoy to Ukraine, Kurt Volker, or EU Ambassador Gordon Sondland, declaring the entire deposition and impeachment process BS. Graham dismissed Sondland's apparent reversal, in which he now admits he thought Ukraine aid was tied to Ukraine making a public anti-corruption statement. And I want to, by the way, clarify that for a second. It's not just that Ukraine needed to make a public anti-corruption statement. Ukraine had to publicly announce that they were launching an investigation into the Bidens. Okay, Donald Trump's political opponent. So I didn't like the wording there that CBS used. Be very specific about what the Trump administration demanded here. Now, in regard to that, Graham suggested he doesn't care what any bureaucrat like Sondland thinks. By the way, Sondland, not a bureaucrat. In fact, he was a huge Trump supporter and donated $1 million to Donald Trump's inaugural fund. So to say that he's just some lame bureaucrat or some partisan who's out to get Trump is absolutely ridiculous. He spent $1 million stupidly of his own money to support a criminal, and now he's wrapped up in this impeachment investigation.
And he looks like the dodo bird from Runaway Bird, with Sesame Street, like like that. Anyway, look
I
at
feel
that.
bad for that poor dodo
Like
bird.
the aging. Oh no, he was mean. It was the mean dodo bird. You guys tweet me. No pun intended. Also Marie Yovanovitch, let's not,
Yes.
which my favorite thing about, this is the week where we're seeing the transcripts, right? They're being released, and then the actual public testimony is gonna happen next week in terms of these same people, which, mind you, none of these people are the whistleblower. Like, this is what I love about these testimonies. Like, they're not the whistleblower, and they're saying all the same things the whistleblower said. So, wow, you just gotta go to bat against all of these career officials who, I have to say, at this point, I'm like, you know what? Good for you, like, thank you. There's, like, they couldn't scoop the State Department out and just like, completely empty it out. I know there's nothing but bramble in there at this point, but there's something like 20% haven't been hired up still in the State Department, but like, still, there were some officials and they pay attention.
Yeah.
And they know a crime and they know when something's crossed the line when they see it. My favorite part though is Yovanovitch says that Sondland, the EU ambassador, told her, because she was like, I think that I'm being set up. Essentially, they're trying to remove me from my job because
I won't play ball.
Because I won't play ball, and I'm sort of raising concerns about this strategy to strong arm Ukraine. And Sondland was like, I don't know, tweet something about Trump.
No, tweet something applauding
positive.
or praising. Praising was the word. Praise Trump on Twitter so you can secure your job.
Just
How
tweet
pathetic
him.
is that?
You're golden.
So pathetic.
So when you bring up things like, well, Lindsey Graham brought up those, I don't believe bureaucrats like that, because what, Sondland's the only bureaucrat that's in Washington?
Absolutely.
He doesn't believe bureaucrats like that, meaning ones that don't help out his agenda or his lies. So I mean, bureaucrats like Barr, bureaucrats like Mike Pompeo.
They're doing great.
No, those bureaucrats are totally on the up and up. They're not bureaucrats apparently. And also, so you go with those hot words. But remember the T-shirts behind Trump in was it in Kentucky?
Read
the transcripts. Hey, let's send Lindsey Graham a whole bunch of those T-shirts. Read the transcripts. Read the transcripts because I mean, until you want to find out what really happened.
I don't do words. I tried them. I don't like them. It's like cottage cheese to me.
He is such a spineless,
I don't like that, don't like
self-interested,
laws.
corrupt, terrible politician. That's who he is.
His face reminded me a lot. Those close-ups, I wasn't prepared for them. Just like silly putty. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go superficial on him, but it's just.
Well, let's go from one giant Republican disappointment to the next. Senator Rand Paul has decided to make a big deal about the identity of the whistleblower. This is the individual who filed a formal complaint in regard to Donald Trump's phone conversation with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. Now, in that phone conversation, it was clear that Trump wanted Zelensky to dig up dirt on his political rival, Joe Biden, and his son, Hunter Biden. Now, Rand Paul has started regurgitating what Trump has said. Trump wants to retaliate against this whistleblower. The whistleblower at this point is irrelevant because now you have more and more evidence, including Trump administration officials coming out and testifying that what Donald Trump did was wrong and that there was quid pro quo involved. So they have corroborated what the whistleblower has said in his formal complaint. And the federal government is supposed to protect his identity if he or she wishes to remain anonymous. But you have Rand Paul running around town arguing that I know the identity, and you know what? I might reveal it. I might reveal the identity of this whistleblower because I'm trying to cozy up to Trump because I want to make sure that Republican voters reelect me in the future, right? So, asked why he hasn't disclosed the name of the official individual, Paul told reporters that he probably will. Then he said, I'm more than willing to, and I probably will at some point. There is no law preventing anybody from saying the same. He actually doubled down on these types of statements in his appearance on Bret Baier's show on Fox. Take a look.
But you don't think this is dangerous to actually out the whistleblower? I mean, the president has said that he's treasonous and a traitor.
I think that the Sixth Amendment of the Constitution is very clear, and I think that what we should have.
All right, so let's go to E2, please.
What about this concern that protecting whistleblowers overall, if you name this person, suddenly jeopardizes other things? Let's go back to 2014. Campaign for Liberty, founded by your dad. You say this: we've got so many millions of government contractors that when they see something wrong, they should be able to report it without repercussions. Your dad, Ron Paul, says, I think we should praise our whistleblowers. Ron Paul said to Applause, adding people like Edward Snowden should be rewarded.
Absolutely.
So if those statements are true, why are you doing what you're doing now?
I agree completely with it, but we were defending Edward Snowden, who I still defend, and I think he should have gotten whistleblower status. Most of the people defending the current whistleblower wanted to lock up Edward Snowden and hang him or execute him. So yes, the whistleblower statute should protect people.
Only the whistleblowers that you like?
No, they should protect him. I want Edward Snowden protected so he's not executed. I want him protected.
What about this guy?
I don't want him executed either. I don't think he should be fired, but I agree with what Lindsey Graham said in your lead-in, and that is that it's a protection from being fired. It's not a protection to be anonymous, particularly if it's going to be a criminal case. Once you have a crime, there is a constitutional protection that you have to confront your accuser.
So there are different standards depending on which whistleblower he likes, right? So there are certain whistleblowers that deserve protections as long as they go along with something I believe. But when it comes to, let's keep it real, it's not even about liking a whistleblower or disliking a whistleblower. It's about Rand Paul's political career. It's about appealing to Trump's base. That's all this is about. If Trump's base was in favor of protecting this whistleblower's identity, then he would fight to protect the whistleblower's identity. Again, the whole purpose of revealing this individual's name is so people can attack him or her, right? I don't know who this person is, and I have no interest in reading any of the disgusting right-wing media that's putting names out there.
When Brett Baier catches you in a lie and points out your hypocrisy, I mean, pack it in.
I know,
it's like
right?
the walking date rape drug. Just called me a hypocrite. Brett Baier looks like a walking date rape drug. That's what I just said, and I stand by it. The point is that even Fox News, I think they're like, all right, how much disbelief am I going to enter into here? In order to continue allowing Republicans to just say whatever they feel like. I don't know where this ends. Where does this go?
You keep moving the lie. Or you just continue to move the lie. So he brought up this, maybe correct me if I'm wrong. We're still in an impeachment inquiry, am I right?
Yeah.
It's not a criminal investigation. It's not a criminal trial.
It's a political process.
Is Donald Trump up? Does he have, are they about to sentence him if they convict him of these crimes? No. The Sixth Amendment says, the very first phrase, in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial, and on and on and on, and also a counsel, and also gets to face his accuser. That's what Rand Paul keeps referring to. The Sixth Amendment. The Sixth Amendment, the Constitution requires you to face your accusers. In a criminal prosecution, it's not what this is.
Right.
This is to investigate his lawlessness so we can see if we're going to put him up and then impeach him. And even if you impeach him, he's not even necessarily going to go out of, be taken out of office yet.
Right.
So, to keep shifting the reality of the situation, when he spoke to a reporter, I forget which network she was from, he goes, you have to get your facts straight. You have to get your facts straight. You see, I can do all this because the Sixth Amendment. The Sixth Amendment doesn't matter if we're endangering the life of this whistleblower. The Sixth Amendment. These are two different things. So you want to go with the law, at least read it first before you start lambasting other people for not reading it.
Yeah, and I think Baier, apologies for what I said about you, but he does have a point, which is that, and I think for people on the left and the right, and it doesn't really matter what your party is, but having a double standard around whistleblowers is not okay, right? And we should be protecting whistleblowers. But I mean, for example, the Republican Party, when Assange released, video of Blackwater, right? Killing civilians, okay, Assange is a pariah, we hate him. And then when Assange releases stuff around Hillary Clinton, Trump talks about him at every rally. I love Assange. Julian, WikiLeaks.
I know.
Wiki. So you can't just bend whatever. I mean, listen, I think Assange has gone off the deep end a little bit. I also think that he, should not be necessarily, I don't know what. I don't know if he should be extradited, etc. But you can't have it both ways, right?
Yeah,
whistleblowers should be protected.
You can't change where you stand on various issues based on whether it helps your political agenda. And you see that happening certainly on the right. And one thing that I wanted to just quickly mention, look, who knows what other questionable things Donald Trump has done while in office. I think this is also his way of intimidating future whistleblowers from coming forward. This is a form of intimidation. This is what he's doing. That's all it is. Because he knows that the evidence is out there. I mean, he knows that there are people testifying against him right now. I mean, he's putting out this argument that, he wants to be able to confront his accuser, right? That's what he wants to do. There are accusers right now. You know them by name. You know them by name. How come you don't want to confront them? It's because it's not about defending yourself. It's not about confronting them. It's about preventing other whistleblowers from coming forward, because I have no doubt in my mind there were other things going on in that administration that were questioned.
And to ignore the lawlessness that's happening. Instead, again, we talked about before, it's not about the content, it's about the process they're gonna attack. This whistleblower is anonymous. The whistleblower is anonymous. Hey, I tweeted earlier, I can name several whistleblowers: Gordon Sondland, Bill Taylor, Alex Vindman, Mick Mulvaney, Rudy Giuliani and Donald Trump. They've all outed you because you all said, hey, this was a quid pro quo. We do this. That's what Mick Mulvaney said. We do this all the time. We do it all the time.
I mean, there is no depth to the syphilitic dream and nightmare that we're in. It's everyone just living inside of Trump's brain or outside of it. That's all there is. Do you live inside his brain or do you live outside of his brain? I think every Republican needs to answer that question.
All right. Well, Francesca Fiorentini,
thank you for
joining us. This was
Anytime.
great. And Jayar Jackson,
thank you.
Check him out on social media. It was a pleasure.
Tweets.
We will be back with a whole new panel.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of the Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.